boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Eddie Hearn only sees one way to convince Katie Taylor to fight one last time. London, England. Eddie Hearn says that Katie Taylor may have had her last fight unless he can deliver an unprecedented farewell night at Croke Park, Dublin. Taylor, 39, is considered one of the greatest fighters of all time, having won 5 world amateur titles and an Olympic gold medal before becoming undisputed at 2 different weights as a professional.
She's the GOAT to me, the greatest woman of all times. Oh, she's easily the greatest boxer that Ireland has ever produced, but more than that, she's the greatest woman boxer of all times.
Greater than Clarissa by a lot, because if not for Katie, Clarissa never would have got to win those 2 gold medals, and I can't stress that enough. It was Katie Taylor who was asked to come out and box in front of the IOC so that they would allow women to box in the Olympic Games, and based on Katie's performance, that's what got all the other girls in. Most recently, she produced one of the best performances of her career to beat Amanda Serrano at a sold-out Madison Square Garden on July 11th in another huge night for women's boxing. The victory took her record to 3-0 against the Puerto Rican multi-weight champion. Taylor's resume reads like a who's who of her era, and Hearn, who has been her promoter for the entirety of her career, says there are few viable challengers left. In fact, the Matchroom boss says there is every chance that the Bray icon might never box again. However, there is one box still left unchecked. Fighting outdoors at Croke Park, Ireland's largest stadium, has been floated, but it has never quite materialized. Taylor did box twice in Dublin, both at the 3 Arena, but she is yet to head outdoors. Now Hearn says that finally securing that fight at Croke Park in front of around 60,000 fans would be the perfect way for Taylor to bow out. After the Serrano fight, it was the first time I've ever heard Katie say, "If I fight again," rather than when, Hearn told The Ring.
Katie doesn't have to keep fighting. That's reality. If she decided to retire tomorrow, I'd be perfectly okay with it because she's more than earned it. Her contributions to the sport greatly dwarf.
Do you not understand that this big women's boxing boom you've been seeing is a direct byproduct of women boxers being allowed to box in the Olympic Games? And that only happened because of Katie.
I mean, that's before she even wins a gold medal. That's before she even goes pro, becomes undisputed, then becomes undisputed again. In the process of doing that, fighting a who's who of her contemporaries, she does not have to keep fighting.
I think that bowing out at the right time is so important. I just think that last fight would be an amazing way to go out, but there has been some conversations, and you've seen the sports minister in Ireland saying they should get behind Katie Taylor at Croke Park. It's still probably the only thing that may get her back in the ring. Selling out MSG in front of a huge audience on Netflix and winning a trilogy is a great way to bow out. But so is having your last fight at Croke Park. It could be one of the only ways we see her in the ring again. When asked about the sort of opponent which might fit the bill for a fight of that magnitude, Hearn conceded that it's not an easy question to answer. Chantel Cameron is a great fight, but she doesn't really have the profile necessarily, he said. Obviously, you can't do Serrano 4, but there are some other fights out there. Maybe Caroline Dubois? I don't mean to be disrespectful, but they don't necessarily have the profile for it. In that instance, at Croke Park, it's about Katie Taylor, but at the same time, Caroline Dubois, Chantel Cameron, and Terry Harper are all in the same boat. Really, he means in terms of selling power. He means in terms of fanfare.
We haven't even looked at opponents yet, and she may not fight again, but we will give her a good rest and see what happens later in the year. Whoever it's against, I do think with her profile, she has a chance of selling the place out. The occasion would be just incredible. And as Eddie Hearn is saying this, the World Boxing Council has gone ahead and ordered a fight between Katie Taylor and Chantel Cameron, her mandatory challenger and WBC interim champion, seemingly forcing Katie to deal with Chantel once again.
The first 2 times they fought, it was under the Matchroom banner, back when Matchroom was promoting Chantel. Now Chantel is with MVP, who is open to funding Taylor vs. Cameron 3 at Croke Park.
I mean, if they can get Katie Taylor more money than Matchroom can, right?
Some have accused Katie Taylor of avoiding that trilogy with Chantel Cameron, a short-sighted perspective given what Katie Taylor was offered to instead box Amanda again. A lot more money than she would have made fighting Chantel.
Chalk it up to short attention spans. If you can't surmise a situation in 1 or 2 sentences, people stop paying attention and they just go with what they feel, irrespective of how illogical it is. The amount of money they offered Katie to fight Amanda.
Anybody would have made that decision. The amount of money they offered her to fight Amanda for a third time. Anybody would have made that decision. Those kinds of dollar amounts are not immediately available to even the most popular women boxers. Katie would have been a fool.
She'd have been an idiot not to do it. So when people say that she was ducking Chantel, if that makes you feel real, if that makes you feel better, but I don't agree. Katie did in that situation what anybody would have did in that situation, what I think Chantel herself would have done in that situation.
But is she going to fight her now? At 39 years old, with very little left to prove and very little left to do in the sport of boxing, will she fight Chantel for a third time so that she can keep her green belt at a time where she's thinking about retiring? I don't know. We'll see.
Then he will fight absolutely anyone. Jaron Ennis, in his deal with us, his extension, part of his deal is he has signed to fight Virgil Ortiz. And when we sat in the office with Golden Boy and DAZN about 3 weeks ago, we hashed out the deal with them. Again, not signed from their side as well, but everything that was discussed and everything that was agreed, Jaron has actually signed a contract to fight Virgil Ortiz. Done.
When and where?
To be agreed between Golden Boy. It will be January or February, basically.
Vegas type of fight?
Yeah, I'd love it. I mean, look, does really well in Dallas, does really well in Philly. I think it's also a great Vegas fight. The plan is for Virgil to have his fight in October, and then we're in for that fight. So you don't have to worry or you don't have to wait for that fight.
If you let Eddie Hearn tell the story, the fight is as good as a done deal. If you let Eddie Hearn tell the story. But Virgil Ortiz Sr., Virgil's father, has come out and he's pushed back. He said, I didn't know Eddie Hearn was Virgil's manager and told Virgil when he fights. I haven't heard anything, and it's not a, hey, Virgil, you fight my guy when I want. That shit has sailed twice. Virgil is on his own path, no matter who anyone says. No waiting anymore for anyone.
So is Eddie Hearn lying?
We'll get to that. Rick Merrigan, Virgil's manager, echoed Senior's sentiments, saying fake news. Virgil Ortiz is not fighting Boots at all in January or anytime soon. We have no offer. We said yes 3 times prior, and he backed out. Every circus needs a clown. And sorry, we're not in this circus. Boots needs Virgil. Virgil needs no one, let alone these childish games. You want to make a fight? Stop the fake negotiations and drama, as I've not been contacted once. And if you think a deal is being made between promoters without me, then you're clearly cracked out. Everyone knows in this sport, if there is a deal to be made, I will sit at the table and make it. I don't play around and most often get right to a deal in the first 15 minutes, or we move on. No one tells us who to fight or will, period, or ever let alone another company or another fighter. We will mutually come to an agreement, or we will go in another direction faster than you can blink. So, unless I post it, Virgil Ortiz or Virgil Ortiz Sr., consider it all cap. We are close to a deal now, with a name far bigger than Boots will ever be. And if it falls apart, trust me, the world will know. It's time to shit or get off the pot.
Addressing Eddie Hearn's comments, I can believe that the higher-ups sat down with each other and discussed this fight. That Matchroom sat down and discussed this fight. DAZN sat down and Golden Boy sat down. Somebody from them. I can believe that. But Eddie Hearn never said they sat down with Rick Merrigan or that they sat down with Virgil Ortiz.
He never said that.
Addressing Rick Merrigan's claim that Virgil Ortiz doesn't need Boots.
Well, so what do you think? That because he fought Sergey Boachuk and Israel Madrimov, that all of a sudden he's Julio Iglesias? Don't kid yourself. Those were good, solid fights against good, solid fighters. But Virgil has not arrived yet, and he hasn't so much as fought for a world title yet. You say that he's about to fight a name bigger than Boots. Bigger than Boots ever will be. It better be somebody good.
So who at 154 has a name bigger than Boots? At 154 or 160, Who could Rick Mirrigan be talking about?
There are not a lot of big draws, big marquee attractions in the junior middleweight division. There really aren't. A lot of those guys have about the same level of notoriety, but in terms of accomplishments, maybe he's talking about Sebastian Fundora?
Maybe.
And there is a legitimate argument that Sebastian Fundora has the biggest name at 154. Not by much, because a lot of those guys are neck to neck. But maybe that's who Rick is talking about.
Maybe.
Virgil is his mandatory challenger via the WBC after all. Virgil's got the interim, and Sebastian's got the full title. Virgil's been interim champion since August of last year, and it is about time that they fight, and it's about time that Virgil fight for a title. The guy's almost 30 years old.
He's 27.
So when Rick Mirrigan says that they've got a fight lined up for October with a bigger name than Boots, that's the only name that comes to mind. I really can't think of anybody else from 154 to 160 that has a bigger name than Boots. That's the only name I think would suffice.
Wait a minute, if they're fighting this name, whoever it is, in the fall, why shouldn't they fight Boots next year? Why is Rick Mirrigan blowing it off?
Just because you're fighting some guy in the fall doesn't mean you can't fight Boots later on. What's with this attitude? You're fighting in the fall? Boots is fighting in the fall. He's supposed to be fighting Rashidi Ellis.
But you're fighting in the fall. Boots is fighting in the fall. You're on practically the same schedule. So why shouldn't the winners meet each other next year? What's the problem?
I think that Rick is being deliberately difficult so he can get more money. That if you want us to come back to the table, it's going to cost you. Because remember that initially, it was Turkey that was going to pay for it. Turkey was going to pay for Boots to fight Virgil. Likely a lot of money.
Be a damn fool to think they'd accept that fight now for less than that.
When you talk about that fight now, you're not necessarily talking about Turkey paying for it. You're talking about Golden Boy and Matchroom paying to do it amongst themselves, which may not be for the same money.
Bottom line, Virgil is not yet in a place to where he's outgrown a Jaron Ennis fight. That is still a big fight for the both of them. It's a great fight to make.
And I understand that Boots rejected the fight before. That's on him.
I'm not saying that it isn't, but it's still something you can explore later on. That's all I'm saying. That just because you guys didn't fight before doesn't mean you can't fight later on.
The word on the street is that Jaron Ennis' next fight, the one for this fall, is going to be against Rashidi Ellis, who has accepted a $500,000 offer from Matchroom to take that fight.
These are just rumors and they should be treated as such, but Rashidi Ellis was one of 4 confirmed opponent options for Boots' next fight. He's a guy who moved up to junior middle like Boots.
Personally, I think they're paying him too much money. $500,000 for a guy like Rashidi Ellis with no marquee value. It's not for a title.
It's not necessarily a big fight. Ennis versus Ellis.
Rashidi Ellis may present a pesky style for Boots, who seems to struggle with movers and jabbers and boxers. Wouldn't have been my first choice. I would have sooner went with either Charles Conwell or Jesus Ramos, the kind of fighters that Boots doesn't have to chase, he doesn't have to find, whereas Rashidi is going to try to play freeze tag all night.
Like he did with Roman Villa?
Roman Villa, a common opponent between them.
What's the word on the street, though? That Eddie Hearn is prepared to give that guy $500,000 to box his man, Jaron Ennis, and he's accepted that offer.
Now we'll see if that rumor checks out.
Yo, just got out of the gym, tired as hell. Let's give you some 411. Jared Anderson has officially pulled out of the fight. We all seen it coming though. I guess there's some beef going on over there in Top Rank, and added to that, he's been getting high like a last month. So, yeah, Jared Anderson pulled out the fight. Started looking for a replacement opponent. I ain't gonna lie, I'm sick right now, but he kind of figured that Jared was gonna pull that
Not just Jared Anderson. Word on the street is that former champion Deontay Wilder has also declined that fight with Jarrell Miller. And for a perspective, this is for a slot on the undercard of the biggest card of the year, Canelo versus Crawford on Netflix next month. Everybody's going to see it because it's not a box office fight. It's not a pay-per-view. It's being made available to all 300 million plus Netflix subscribers around the world. Why wouldn't you want to box on that show? It's getting to the point with American boxers to where they're not really prize fighters, not anymore.
Piracy is not an issue because there's no paywall. Politics are not an issue because Turkey's making it happen. Money's not an issue because Turkey's the one paying for it. And that is not enough to get the American boxer to do his goddamn job.
What the hell is wrong with the American boxer? What happened?
I mean, we know what happened with Jaron Anderson. He started spiraling out of control a long time ago, even before his loss to Martin Bacoli. That guy was all over the place. That's why I picked Martin to beat him.
I said Martin would beat him. I said that Martin would knock him out. Now, what's wrong with Wilder? Wilder's got a ticker problem. He's had a ticker problem ever since the second Fury fight, when he realized he's not God's gift to boxing. He's not this era's George Foreman.
He's not invincible. He's not none of that.
Was it? He came back in Wichita, Kansas against some nobody on Black Prime. Now, why bother to come back? Why bother to continue to fight if you're going to turn down opportunities like this? I mean, isn't this what it's all for? To create generational wealth that not only you can retire on, but that your kids and their kids can benefit from.
Turkey's continued presence in the sport of boxing continues to separate the contenders from the pretenders because he's removed a lot of obstacles, in turn
seeing their true colors. A lot of these yellow bellies that are running around. See, normally these guys can hide behind the politics because you box over here and I box over there. Well, this fight isn't worth that much money, so I'm not going to do it. Been a lot of pretenders in the American boxing scene that have benefited from these obstacles and allowed them to go unbeaten a lot longer than they should have. In steps in Turkey and removes all those barriers, and you see what they're really made of. You see what they really are.
Jarrell Miller is hardly an all-time great American heavyweight, but look at how many guys are folding.
Floundering at the very idea that they should have to work hard for their money. Because, Jared Anderson, him beating Jarrell Miller was not a foregone conclusion. Neither was Wilder.
You could have gave Jarrell Miller good odds to beat them both.
Big baby! Big hungry.
Yeah, Jarrell Miller got knocked out like Deontay Wilder got knocked out and Jared Anderson got knocked out. He lost the fight.
I'm saying he's lost before. He's been stopped before. Like they got stopped before. But it's not stopping him. So why is it stopping them? And you notice that they had a lot more hype behind them than he had behind him.
There was more of a buzz behind a Jared Anderson, more of a buzz behind a Deontay Wilder than there was behind a Jarrell Miller. But look at how it shakes out. When you take away all the obstacles, look at what they're made of. Look at who they are.
Separating the contenders from the pretenders. That's all I see.
You can't even call them prize fighters because that's the biggest prize that's out there for the lot of them. For Jared Anderson, for Deontay Wilder. Who else is going to offer them the kind of money Turkey's going to offer them? And they don't want to fight. They don't want to work.
They're not legacy fighters, clearly. But they're not prize fighters either. I don't know what they are.
Waste of goddamn time, near as I can tell.
Waste of space.